Hey, what's up, Black Knight Nation? I'm your host, Sal Interdonato. This is I guess, breaking news edition of the Black Knight Nation podcast, sponsored by Higher Echelon and Joe Ross. I'm here with Seth Mendelson, and earlier this morning, some news broke that Army has been voted as one of the 14th member of the American Athletic Conference, and there's word out there that Army could start play as early as next season in the AAC. Joined by Seth Mendelson. We've talked about this on the podcast a couple times, more within the last month when there were talks about Army being that 14th member and talks between Army and the AAC. And now it looks like it's coming to a fruition. So, Seth, I know you're going to write a column for us later, but what are your initial thoughts on this?
As we discussed privately, and we've talked over the weeks on this, I think it's something that absolutely had to be done for two reasons. One, financial. It does bring in over time. It'll bring in more money. We know that there's some contracts that have to be paid out to teams that Army will have to cancel against over the next few years. Could be next decade. But I think the AAC is definitely, I'm sure they talked about this, and I'm sure the AAC is helping on that. But financially, they had to do this. They'll bring in more money. I'd like to know more about the details about the Army's deal with CBS. Does that continue? Do we know that? Anything about that yet?
Yeah. Well, real quick, before we go into further detail, Army is supposed to put out some kind of release later today, and Athletic Director Mike Buddy will be available for questions tomorrow. So from what I can gather, I would think it's going to be the same deal that Navy has, where Navy can broadcast its home games on the CBS Sports Network. That's what they do. Their road games or any games outside of any conference games outside or on the ESPN platform. It could be ESPN, ESPN Plus, ESPN News. Does that still even exist, ESPN News? I'm not sure. ESPN Plus, the games will be on. So on the ESPN family of networks and streams. So that's where it'll probably be at. Like if they're playing South Florida, at South Florida, probably be, in that neighborhood. But the thing is, if they can keep their CBS network contract, which is roughly, I would say, $1 million a year, somewhere around there. And then the big one is the Army Navy contract. That's the big one to keep. And I think that they split, Army and Navy have a couple million to split through that. So then you got the revenue from the AAC. And to me, real quick, my opinion, be real quick, is this all about money? Is this all about, trying to get, if it's about the path to get to the national playoff, the college football national playoff, then it's not really the right thing. That's not what it should be about.
I don't think
it's probably about money, Seth. It's probably about, they say scheduling probably, because in the last 2 years, Tennessee has opted not to play Army. Ball State has opted not to play Army. Tennessee paid off Army. Ball State took a bigger payout to play Georgia over Army. And I guess what, the crazy stuff with realignment, there's a little bit of worry about scheduling out, but Army has these contracts through at least 10 years from now. Like you say, there's games, some of these games are scheduled in the 2037. Now, are those handshake deals or is the contract actually signed? We don't know that. That information doesn't really get put out. But I think it's a lot of this has to do with, money. What is it all about when decisions like this are made?
Well, that's my second point. Is the people I talked to up at West Point and elsewhere, mostly at West Point, I think the larger concern, as much as they want more money, everybody needs it. The larger concern is they are concerned that certain leagues are backing away. The MAC conference, for example, they are having trouble scheduling games with most of the MAC conference teams. There are exceptions. So now there's fewer and fewer Division I FBS teams willing to play Army on a regular basis. Troy does it, and there's a couple others, Coastal Carolina. And I think there's a worry that as everything changes, that they're going to have fewer and fewer options to get teams. Let's be honest. Some of the teams coming up to West Point, nobody knows their names. Nobody knows. The average fan, we know it, the average fan doesn't know Troy. As good as they are, and they're good, and they've been great over the last 3 years, they're not following that. I think that has hurt attendance a little bit. The third factor, and I think this was decided before the LSU game on Saturday, it was just maybe dotting the I's and crossing the T's. Monken said on Saturday that he doesn't want to play LSU again. And he kind of said it. I asked him, is that true? And he backed off. In the press conference yesterday, discussing the UMass game coming up, he said it again. Now, he obviously was probably privy to what's going on, but I think we learned a lesson here that Army and many other schools, it's not just Army, okay, cannot really compete with a top 10 to top 20 school anymore. And it might become dangerous. LSU, as Monken said throughout his press conference yesterday, and he was asked this several times by several different reporters, not me. He said that these guys are much bigger, they're much faster, they're much more talented than the guys who go to Army. He also said, my guys are tough, and his guys are tough. And I watched that, and you watched it, Sal, in the last 2 games.
Yeah.
They got clobbered, but they got up every single time, and they played to the best of their ability every time. So I think that has something to do with it. And I think they realize that they have to get themselves into a group of 5 conference. This is the best one. This is really the only one to go to because it's a little bit more national. The Sun Belt tends to be Southern schools. And what's the other conference down there?
Conference USA.
Conference USA is, we've been there. It's a different conference.
Well, you're not going back to Conference USA, right?
It's a different conference, though. Most of the teams that were in where Army was in are no longer there. But they're not going there. It's a Southern Conference. This conference, at least you have Temple, you have Navy. I believe
not a conference game, Navy, not a conference game.
It's still there. It's still there.
I mean,
Carolina's not that far away.
Real quick, I don't want to interrupt. Real quick, we have a guest coming on, a special guest. But real quick, I want to say about these LSU games and stuff. That's a money grab game. You're not going into LSU thinking you're ever going to beat LSU. That's a money grab game.
They want to go back
for money. So to say that they'll never go back and they never want to play LSU, if the money's there, they will play teams like those teams as their one game that they can play. Well, 2 games that they have now available once they go to the AAC. We want to welcome in Mark Beach. Mark's appeared on the podcast before talking about some Army history, and he had the book When Saturday Mattered the Most about the 1958 undefeated Army team. Mark, thanks so much for joining us on the fly here, talking about this AAC.
Mark, great book, by the way. Great book. Nice to meet you. And fantastic book.
Thank you very much. You're the one.
I think a lot of people read
it. Mark, I know you're just getting the news. Do you have any initial thoughts on this? I know I didn't get a chance to talk about real quick about Army's time in Conference USA. 7 years, 13-63 record, I believe 9-41 in conference play. Those were the dark days of Army football. Toward that a name that doesn't like to get mentioned too much in this podcast, Todd Berry. Just what are your initial thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, from the 1958 perspective, from the historical perspective, the strategy for Army scheduling has always been 3 games you should definitely win, 3 games against teams that it's a 50-50 toss-up, and then 3 tough games to games that you basically, not LSU. I think that was a big one. But there were like 3 games that you probably aren't going to win, and try to make it a national schedule. And I think that's why Conference USA didn't work out so great for Army, even despite the name. It wasn't really the entire USA. And a lot of times it was hard finding 3 games that you should win because, conference play was tougher play, and Army didn't fare well in that sort of scenario. So I'm surprised they're having success with an offense-based war in passing this year. So maybe I would be surprised by the fact that they're going to be playing in a conference schedule again. But I'm leery. There are guys who deal with this much more than I do and know much more about it than I do, making the decisions. And so, as a alum, as a fan of Army football, I think it's an interesting move. I'm not sure I agree with it. I think Army is a national team, and I wonder what's going to happen to their national TV contract. They're one of I think one of the 2 teams in college football with a national TV contract besides Notre Dame.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. So I don't know what becomes of that.
Yeah. What I'm thinking is it's going to be the same as Navy, where Navy can broadcast their home games on CBS Network. There'll be an agreement with the AAC to have the home games still broadcasted by CBS. That's nothing official. That's just me thinking out loud. And they're supposed to have a press release later today. Yeah, so I think that's how that will be handled. So you hope that they can keep that, because it's even like the AAC is courting Army. Yeah, Army, has probably Mike Buddy, the AD, Seth, he might have told you that has to keep an eye on the landscape of college football and the realignments constantly, right? And has to have these talks with the conferences and stuff. But the AAC is the one courting Army, so if Army's going to do this, the AAC probably has to have some contingents in there where, okay, the TV contracts, okay, the buyouts between, all these games that you have on the schedule that you've agreed to play. I don't think Army's going to be on the hook for all of them. I'm sure the AAC will have some money involved in there. And how much is the AAC contract worth to Army? Like being a part of the AAC nets you how many? What is it? A couple million a year, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it all adds up, right? Because we have the Army Navy contract, we have the CBS Sports Network contract, we have the now AAC contract, and now we have the if you're playing, the LSUs of the world, you're getting money for that too. So I mean,
also getting the bowl game contracts. I think
gotta make a bowl game. But
the AAC shares the wealth. So I think they have 6 spots in bowl games. So that money gets shared with the team that doesn't make a bowl game. You get you don't get a lot, but you get a portion of it. But that definitely helps too. I'm looking at the AAC, the teams in there, and this is, you have some decent squads. SMU's leaving. Their best squad year to year left is really probably Memphis.
Tulane.
And it's recent. Yeah, Tulane has been good recently. Army beat UTSA this year. Rice is not a great conference. Atlantic, Tulsa, Charlotte, East Carolina, Temple, of course, Navy. Yeah, these are schools that we can that Army can be competitive with. With the right
with the right offense. With the right offense.
Well, the right personnel. Let's cut to the chase. And we always talk about the right offense. You got to have the right people that will run this offense, and that's the key. It comes down to recruiting and getting the kids. And that's going to have to, they're going into a better conference, going from independent to a better conference. But this conference, they can do, maybe not every year, they can do some damage if they get the kids. Navy has had good years, and Army Navy are tied at the waist, and they've had now the last couple of years have been tough. But right now, Navy is 3-4. They're 2-2 in the conference.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah, they're 2-2. Sorry to I've talked to somebody really deep invested that's an Army football fan basically for life, and he thinks that this is a disastrous move. He thinks that this is a disastrous move because, you're going from the schedule where you can make, like Mark, you said, the schedule that you can make, right, that's under your control, that you can have those games where, like 3-4 games are the winnables, and you mentioned. And now you're going to a conference schedule, and now you can have days back to where you're a 3-4 win team where Navy's been.
There are no breaks. There are no breaks on a conference schedule, and so every game counts to every one of the teams you play, and it's tougher. And Army benefits from like going up against Coastal Carolina and then taking on Michigan, and you can beat Coastal Carolina, and you can still get up for Michigan, and almost beat Michigan.
Yeah,
I had that brief thought. Until I found out that the quarterback wasn't, we were playing our freshman quarterback against LSU. They're like, yeah, maybe they'll do better than I think. They just, if you're looking at it from a player's perspective, if you're a kid who wants to go, wants to play Division I football, Army appeals to you because Army plays Division I football, and you get to play at the big house. You get to play in Death Valley, or, you get to play, in Baton Rouge. I don't know that exists anymore, and with a conference schedule. And
well, they still have one game they can do that with. I mean, they have two open games a year.
But if you have a conference schedule, do you want to schedule a Michigan? Do you want to schedule I don't know.
I don't think they will. I think they're going to move away from that. I think they'll schedule more regional team. You know, if you're going to stay with the Power Five, they'll go with the teams that they can be competitive with, like a Wake Forest or a Duke or Northwestern or Vanderbilt. I think that's what they'll go to. I think the game against LSU, you know, even with Bryson Daly, our starting quarterback, in there, he wasn't. They were losing that game badly. They were outclassed. Jeff Monken has said it in his post press conference on Saturday, and he said it again on yesterday in his pre-conference for this week's game. You know, that this team was just simply better personnel. My opinion, and Sal talked about it differently, but you know, they want the money, and everybody wants the money, but it's dangerous. It's dangerous sending your guys down to LSU. Somebody's going to get hurt because the quality of player is so much different, and you know, that's dangerous. It's possible.
That's not the Army football mentality of a football player's mentality. They're supposed to be tougher than everybody else, Seth. They're not supposed to say danger when I go down to LSU. I mean,
I think they are as tough as anybody else out there. I give them credit. I watched those games in person and on TV, and I think they're just as tough. I'm not taking anything away from the kids, but they're not as talented. You're getting a different, as Monken says, you're going into a different bucket of kid to come to West Point or Navy or Air Force Academy, certainly 2 or 3 levels below what LSU is attracting.
I don't think I've ever seen a halftime interview where the coach is resigned to his fate as Mungan's halftime interview at LSU. You know,
he said in the press conference last week, he said to us, I just want to be competitive. He never said, I want, of course he wants to win. He said to us this week, I always want to win. But last week he said, I just want to be competitive, hopefully into the fourth quarter. He knew what he was up against. He was trying to, you know, condition all of us to say this could be ugly. He hoped for the best. He went down there hoping to win. He said that, and I believe him. Yeah. But it's we shouldn't be playing. West Point should not be playing LSU. Navy plays Notre Dame every year because of tradition, and they beat them, I think, 3 out of 4 years. You know, going back now 10 years ago. But you know, besides that, these schools should not be playing. And college football is changing. You have the Power Five, and then you have the second level, the Group of Five, and it seems that they're separating from each other. So Army has to identify with one or the other. You can't stay independent because of scheduling. And obviously you can't go Power Five. The only conference that would consider us is the ACC. We wouldn't win a game there in many years. So this might be the best alternative for West Point at this point. How are we going to do? It depends on how he recruits. And maybe this will help. Maybe it won't. I don't know. I hope it helps. But there's some teams in here who aren't that great year to year.
Yeah, we're not going to go through all the teams right now. But I mean, like maybe Seth and maybe Mark, you were saying, I mean, when Charlotte comes to Mikey Stadium, like I mean, you know, Florida Atlantic comes to Mikey Stadium. I don't know. I just, it's, I think that, you know, there's a concern about, Mark, I don't know what your opinion is of this, but my opinion is why right away? Why the next season?
They want to
build. Go ahead, Seth. Go. What do you think?
They need them for next year. They want to have 14 teams. They probably
because the AAC needs 14
teams. And Army probably said, "Okay, make us a deal," and they probably made them a deal. I'd love to know the particulars. I'm not sure we ever will, but we might. But they probably made them a deal, and they probably said, "Okay, we'll handle your contracts. We'll pay X percent." I don't know what that is. I'm sure something was done.
Yeah, you would think. Guys, if you're watching right now, want to comment or question for us, we'll be on for a few more minutes to discuss this. I'm going to go through a couple of comments that I saw on social media, if I can find them. Just from postings on our Facebook page. I have Jason Warren saying this is a bad idea for a number of reasons, and many old grads have tried to warn this administration not to join a conference. Firstly, the independent route allows us to play lesser schools from time to time to rebound with our lack of size and speed from the pounding of the bigger games. This would be impossible now in the conference. Secondly, if we look at Navy over the time, it has declined in the conference as schools figure out how to play with it and its relative lack of talent. Even the option became ineffective because their opponents adjusted to it. So if Army goes back to the option, it will still be an issue in the conference. Finally, by joining this conference, we cut our local games that drew fans, the New England, New York teams, who wants to go watch South Florida at Mikey, especially when Army isn't competitive. So it's all good points. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of that more than a lot of like, yes, we're going to the AAC on social media, So I don't know. Yeah,
Can I address that?
Of course.
Hey, we already play. West Point already plays some AAC teams every year. We play Tulane, we play UTSA, we play North Texas, Temple, obviously Navy. So we play half. We don't play them all of them every year. I mean, this is a jump up. Two, the local teams that West Point plays, the teams from New York, the Mid Atlantic, and the New England, they don't draw. I mean, Boston College does, but UMass, it doesn't draw. They don't have a big following. What schools are we talking about? Syracuse, they would draw a little bit, not as well as BC. So we don't really play an Eastern schedule. We have UMass on it. Holy Cross is coming in because they always play one team from the East. A Division I AA school, and that's either Patriot League or usually Patriot League or Villanova. And they actually do draw. Okay, Villanova did. But I don't. We got to go someplace, and I think this conference is not a bad conference for West Point. I know I'm probably on the minority here, but I've been a fan of a conference for 10 years now, and this makes the only sense to me. I'm sorry, I talked too much.
Anything, Mark? Do you agree? Disagree?
I've been an Army football fan since the 70s. My dad went there, and so I grew up cheering for Army football. It's why I got fascinated with the 58 team, because it stunned me that Army was ever really, really, really good at football, and they were. And I have sort of the lessons learned. For some reason, Army keeps learning them over and over again, and you don't. I think in this day and age, getting away from the option offense is a bad thing, like going to a pass heavy thing, and getting away from getting involved in a conference where the schedule is taken out of your hands. And you're right, your Army plays all those teams, but Army, those are toss up games, and you go from 3-4 games a year being toss up games to every game being a toss up game. And I just think that's not.
I don't know if that's true, though.
My hunch is that's not good for Army, but I could be wrong. But my hunch is that's not going to be, good for the, I'm good if Army wins 5-6 games a year. I want them to win more, but if they win 5-6 games a year, they're doing well. That's good for Army football, and because they're not going to drop down a division, they're not going to do anything else. They're going to play Division I, and if they are, they're going to take their lumps. But I think it's going to be hard to win 5-6 games a year when you're playing a toss-up game every week. That's my opinion.
I'm not sure they're all toss-up games every week. I mean, and it depends on the year. It depends on your talent. Maybe this year, Army would not do well in this conference. But, the 2021 team that won 9 games, Sal, is that correct?
Yeah.
Maybe they could have been very competitive.
I don't want to deal on maybe they could have or whatever. This is going to be the future of Army playing in the AAC, and Mark makes a good point. You're not getting you rarely, even when Navy plays, they rarely get a runaway game where they win. It's look at, they played Charlotte a couple weeks ago. The game was 14-0. I mean, it's like Mark was saying, it's a battle every week. And we have a comment from James of Ask for Football saying he doesn't understand the harder schedule argument. Navy has a worse team this year, and they're probably going bowling. Plus, not having to play 2 FCS teams makes the schedule better. Yeah, I mean, nobody wants to see. I think the only person that wants to see Army play more than one FCS team was Rich Ellerson. I think Rich Ellerson, the former coach, would have loved to see Army play 2 or 3 FCS teams, to kind of help out with the record back in the day. So, that's a coach removed. So, I mean, we're moving forward with this. We're moving forward with the AAC. It looks like announcement, Army press release today. Mike Buddy talking to the media tomorrow. And we'll see what he has to say. We're interested to see it. Are they going to go next year right away to the conference? I'm not sure what they'll probably tell if he's asked about the TV rights and stuff. We hope he talks about that too. Mark, real quick, what have you thought about the new offense today and this season? I'm sorry, the new offense this season. It's been a struggle the last 2 games with no points. They can't get into the red zone. Man, it's been rough the last 2. Granted, LSU and Troy are pretty good defenses, but what are your thoughts?
Not winning the Boston College game was a killer. They were ready to put that game away, and then in one play, like the whole thing flipped around, and it's an L, and it cost them because now they haven't won, I think, in 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So it's it was tough. The offense has been better than I thought. Like that actually it looks decent, and there are option elements to it. But I think I'm surprised Air Force is as good as Air Force seems to be handling it just fine, and Army and Navy seem to be having their struggles. But I'd like to see Army's offense for real against somebody besides LSU, and I think Troy was pretty good. So I'm willing to take those 2. But I thought Boston College was a good test, and we should have beaten Boston College, is my opinion. So I tentatively positive reviews for the new offense.
Yeah, we'll see. I talked to Ijon Marshall about the offense yesterday. He's a slot receiver for Army. It's on our YouTube channel. If you give that interview a listen, Ijon is one of the realest players I've known on Army. He gives an honest opinion about the team's play, the LSU game, his play this year, and hoping that they can bounce back in these next 5 games. And it's almost like I wrote it when I was a beat writer, Mark and Seth, a second season, right? But you don't want your second season to start in your 8th game of the season. That's a little deep into the season when you're 2-5 and you have hopes of winning out and trying to have a winning season. And these Commander-in-Chief's trophy games are still on the table. But man, if you don't get by Saturday in UMass and you're going to head to Denver and play a ranked Air Force team with 5 straight losses, you kind of want to get that bad taste out of your mouth before you head up there, I'm guessing. So it'll be interesting. Really appreciate it. We'll go to one more comment from James and we'll get out of here. Differences between
was the 98 season, was that with Todd Berry, or was that
no, that's Sutton.
That was
Sutton.
Todd Berry? Okay.
No, that's Bob Sutton.
Oh, Bob Sutton, yeah. So Bob Sutton was still there, and the coach or the athletic director who moved in the Conference USA was Al Vanderbush, who was a guard on the 58 undefeated team. It was, he had some real ties there.
It wasn't Rick Greenspan. Greenspan came in and then brought in Barry, fired Sutton, brought in Barry, and then we know the rest is history. So differences between 98 Conference USA and AAC now: not running a pro style, payout amount, revenue sharing, bowl access, television exposure, negotiating power, enforced academic standards. Good points. As far as the television exposure, I mean, ESPN2, ESPN Plus, some of these games, as far as television exposure, maybe if you got a really, good matchup, maybe they get on like an ESPN2 Saturday night game. I don't know. I don't know. I mean,
hey, the Navy Air Force game was the CBS game of the week for Saturday afternoon. It was a national game.
Yeah, Air Force and Army too, right? I think 11:30 start for Air Force and Army out in Colorado. I could be wrong. I should know that, but I think it's an earlier start just to be on CBS. So I can double check that. But yeah, I mean, we really appreciate everybody's comments. Here's James coming right back with a couple more facts and figures here. Army had like 4 national TV games in their Conference USA years, and he says, I think this is a good move. Army will be competitive in the league with the college football playoffs expanding. Army will have a chance every year. Oh, this is Rob B. I'm sorry. Rob B says that he thinks Army will have a chance every year
to the college football playoff. Is that what he means?
Well, eventually when the conferences expand, I believe like the AAC will have, I think they have a spot in the 16, maybe. I'm not sure.
The best team from the group of 5, which this year would be Air Force. If this year was 12 teams instead of 4, Air Force being the best of the group of 5.
But that's changing, Seth. That's
if Army ever makes the college football playoff, I will come on this program and eat a tar bucket.
Well, Air Force, if they go undefeated, and this was next year, would have made the college football playoffs. This year it doesn't because there are only 4 teams. But next year, they're taking 1 team from the group of 5. That might expand to 2, I understand. There's negotiations for that. And then they would be, of course, the worst seed. They'd be the 12th seed. They would play the 5 seed in the first round. But if the season ended today and this was next year, Air Force would be the team. They're the highest ranked group of 5 squad. They're 19th ranked.
All righty. You have it there. Seth just educated me. So we really appreciate you guys joining us. We're gonna get out of here. But first, check out our Black Knight Nation website. We have this. I wrote a quick story on the reports. Hopefully fill in some information once Army puts out its press release. Seth is gonna write a column on the whole situation. We have on our YouTube channel, like I said, we have interviews with Ijan Marshall and Caleb Fortner, one-on-one interviews, really good interviews. Take a listen to that on our YouTube channel. Subscribe to that. I'm going to write a story on Leo Lowen becoming a Campbell Trophy finalist today, one of 16 finalists for the academic Heisman. Great job by Leo Lowen, 3.92 GPA at West Point. Dean's List every semester. Starting linebacker, leading tackler. I think he should.
And a great kid.
Really good. Yeah. Hey, Mark, just give him the academic. Give him the Campbell Trophy right now. Just give it to him.
Why not?
Absolutely. Mark, thanks a lot for joining us on the fly here. Really appreciate your insight and hope to get you back on again. And Seth, again, thanks a lot. And we'll be back. Hopefully to review a UMass win on Saturday or Sunday night. Guys, have a great afternoon and evening.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. See you, Seth.